Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Aaron Boyd, Senior Editor for Technology and Events at NextGov, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the latest edition in our Up Close series, Conversations on the Future of Work. Today, I'm joined by Keith Crutt, Director of People Analytics at NASA. Keith's work at the intersection of data and people make him the perfect person to close out our series, exploring what lies ahead in the federal human capital strategy. And we're excited to have him here for a closer look at the work he's doing to better understand and implement technology in the workplace. Keith, thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Great to be here.
So, talk to me a little bit about, we mentioned a little bit about what you do. What is your title there at NASA, and how did you get to where you are? What was kind of the trajectory of your career path?
Yeah, great. So I am the lead for People Analytics here and also the Deputy Director for Talent Strategy in our Office of the Chief Human Capital Officer. And the path to get here has been kind of a winding road through a few different areas, a little bit around analytics and technology, a little bit on each of the different parts of what makes an enterprise tick, like the HR side of the house, and a little bit in the IT side or the operations side, and financials and so on, and then being able to put that all together into kind of how do you sort of tell a story about what are the most important things happening in the business, ask the right questions, and then figure out the right ways to get useful answers. So could probably talk more about that if you want to, but it's a mashup of a lot of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, was it always your goal to use data with regard to workforce? Like, did you always say, one, I want to work at NASA, two, I want to work with data, and three, I want to work with people? Or was it more of this is just kind of came together organically throughout your career?
I think always want to work at NASA is probably got to be part of that. But when you say data, there's so many things that can mean. And even just putting together the social science kind of data with what is typically in sort of like a systems or a data science type view, to be able to see a perspective that you might not have seen before means something. But even if you get outside of traditional definitions of data, my own background has gone through kind of a lot of the STEM and the arts side of the world. I kind of came into the workforce after an undergraduate degree on literature, which had followed a lot of STEM work before that. But then, once I was in the workforce and writing, I realized how much, having good data and asking the right questions really helped you get into what was most important or what could have the biggest impact. So kept kind of bolstering more of the numbers side of it and the analytics side of it in my further education, and then pulled that all together into an MBA type degree that looked at enterprise perspective of how to put it all together. So in the current job, that all comes into play because, the data itself is like a language. It's a way to communicate with people in kind of a way that makes sense no matter where you are if you can get the right kind of information. And it's also like an engineering activity because the more that you kind of look at what that really where that data came from, and what it really reflects, it kind of makes you get down into the system and understand what's really happening in an organization. So you get this really kind of valuable Rosetta Stone between a lot of different perspectives that can help people collaborate and work together and plan and align, which are all such important activities when you have an agency trying to do pretty amazing things at any one given moment, as well as plan for a future of things that is constantly in flux. So, yeah, fun place to be.
I bet. And I want to get more into some of the unique use cases that you have there at NASA and how you're diving into those. But let's start with a little bit more table setting about what it is you do. So, what kinds of data are you collecting, and how are you using it for the workforce? Are you just saying, I have data on how many contracts we've issued, and here's how many are successful, or are you getting in deeper into individuals?
Yeah, really good question. I mean, first off, whenever we talk about like what our team does or what other people analytics teams may do, the first and most important thing is asking the right questions. So before you even get into the data itself and start doing analysis, it's trying to understand what the right problem set is and frame that problem. In some part, what we do is to really engage with the mission and what's going to make the most impact in any situation. But then, the data itself, in past roles, I've focused specifically in certain areas of data. So when I first started working with HR data, a lot of it was specifically about HR. And over time, I've seen where it's so much more interesting when you put things together. So what our team is doing actively right now is trying to both build the capabilities to put together those different kinds of information, as well as take those critical business issues and the important questions and apply those new capabilities to them. So it's this constant iteration of delivering value while also building the capability to deliver more value. And future of work is a great example of that because it's a topic that has just so many different facets to it. And we need to understand, the aspects of it that are really, central to our workforce and caring for our people right now in a completely unprecedented time. How do we understand how people are doing on so many levels, and how this different kind of working that we're in right now, where we've basically flipped a switch over a few days from a small percentage of our workforce teleworking to almost all of it, and then we're continuing to manage things like rocket launches with remote workers. It's a pretty amazing change. So understanding how that's going for people and how that experience can differ for different people, those are tremendous activities for analytics as well. But then beyond the people component of it, what are the technology components, and how is this, where are people hitting the networks from a VPN at home versus on site, or the strategic infrastructure components of this. So how are we going to adjust our office spaces so that we're best using taxpayer dollars on where the work is getting done? If there's going to be sections of an office that are going to be open for periods of time, how do we use those resources effectively and start kind of redesigning our space effectively, and let alone the cost modeling of all of this and how it all needs to drive into what our policies are. So with future of work, we've been trying to approach that by taking some surveys type information about that experience and joining it with some of the actual systems information about where people are working from and what kinds of missions they're working on, and then start to join that as well.
Yeah, because that's what I wanted to get into is with some of the types of data that you're able to collect. I also think it's you talked about remote work pre-pandemic. You all had one of the most remotest workers, right? I think of the space station and all that. You're probably used to pulling data from people who aren't right in front of you, and I imagine the stressors. In fact, I know for a fact that NASA really does measure the stressors on astronauts over time, particularly at the space station, because that's such an important thing. So I imagine you had some practice with all of that before. But I'm curious how you take that understanding, the ability to collect that data, knowing what you need to collect, knowing how to break that down, something that NASA's been doing for decades, and how you apply that to the whole workforce, particularly with the kinds of data you're able to collect. So you mentioned surveys. That definitely seems like an obvious way to poll everyone. It sounded like you were talking about like telemetry data. Where am I logging in? Am I logging in at 2 a.m. and not at 9 a.m. like I'm normally supposed to, right? Like that kind of data makes sense. What other kinds of data do you all have access to, both that employees are giving up willingly and purposefully, and stuff that you're just kind of collecting in the background? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and the willingly and purposefully part of it is a really important starting point to what you're asking, because I mean, there are tremendous areas of our mission that work to understand the stresses of the kinds of completely outside of the usual stress that people would go into in that kind of situation. And,
yeah,
and
I don't have
there are areas for human,
yeah, right. Right? Like,
well done. So I mean, human research is a field. Human subject research needs a special kind of review to make sure that that is done ethically and responsibly. That is a lot different than the kind of area where we typically work in my field, where we're trying to give people a voice, and the opportunity needs to come with an inherent trust. We can't do anything that would ever be sort of anything less than transparent or opt-in with this kind of information because of that. I mean, it's to help. It's not to kind of be looking over people's shoulders to any aspect or micromanage or over monitor here. So the differences on those, there's process differences of how you would review the kind of mission research versus what we would do internally. But then digging into a little bit more of what we would do internally, part of that has been innovating in the way that we would gather survey information. So there's great foundational stuff like the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, but we also augment that with surveys about how people have come into the organization as new hires, which obviously in the past year and a half has been a lot different. Coming in as a new hire and never actually coming to your office and meeting people face to face. There's information about exits. Like an exit survey you can opt into and understand, did people leave because of this situation in some part? What did they want to tell us about that? But then how do you kind of pulse people along the way of, all right, we've been in this mode for a few months now. How's it playing out for you? What are the things that you wish were different? How could we help make this better for you? To give more of that kind of opportunity, again, voice that perspective. Those are still all just surveys. So then, we're trying to explore new ways that, might be more conversational. The idea of using chatbots is actually really interesting because, people some research is showing people are more comfortable talking to a chatbot sometimes than another person. So if we can give them a forum to be able to engage with a bot about their experience, fully, again, transparent that it is a bot and what we're doing with the information, then it might help engage people in a different way and maybe raise more of that experience and do what previously would have taken a lot of time to do qualitative research that we're able to do in quantitative scale through that kind of automation. And so on with different pilots for gathering the perspectives. The system side of it gets interesting too, because
I do want to touch on that system stuff, but I feel like it is a little separate. Yeah. So I wanted to finish honing in on the people side and the surveys and stuff, because I'm also wondering how you strike the balance between helping individuals and maintaining and enabling a certain amount of anonymity, which I imagine would lead more toward helping the group or the office or the agency wide, right? If I'm responding to a survey and you ask me a question of, are you getting so burned out that you now hate your boss, right? If that's the wording. I don't want to respond to that with my name on it, right? I might want to respond to that anonymously. So how do you measure or balance helping individuals through times of stressors and helping them meet their performance versus getting maybe more accurate information because you enable anonymity, but then you can't help the person individually?
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting question. When are you kind of aggregating information versus when you, any of the work that we're doing on the analytics side is in the aggregate view, and we're looking for shapes and patterns. Now there are other areas where we can start using information for individuals, their own use. But we want to make sure that we're compartmentalizing that the right way. So like a really good example on that, there's a colleague of mine at another high-tech company started implementing a predictive attrition model that got so precise to where the company's managers would actually kind of reach out to somebody if they were at risk of leaving and say, hey, how do we kind of help keep you here? Which is for them a really great practice, because their workforce knows that's what they're about as a company. They're always going to kind of go that far out into what technology can offer as possible, and there isn't a loss of trust there because it's an expectation. For us, we wouldn't do something like that. Where we're using that aggregate model to then trigger an individual conversation with somebody, because we wouldn't want somebody to feel like someone is. It's just not our culture as much, and that could ultimately compromise the trust in any of the work that we're doing, which is again so important. But now contrast that with, right now we're all going through using collaborative technologies more than ever before, and that is constantly generating information about how you're spending your time in meetings versus, in deep work on your computer, or who you're interacting with, or, what your kind of work time and hours are, et cetera. And a lot of that information, can give an individual really good perspective about, how they can take care of themselves, that self-care component, as well as, their own professional development and coaching. So, we're exploring a technology right now, completely exploratory, but that is a standard product on the market for being able to see more of that information as an individual. Your supervisor doesn't get it. It's not, an agency level roll-up or analysis, but as an individual, you might be able to get a personalized report that doesn't go anywhere else, that just helps you see some of those things, so that if you wanted to make some adjustments, you can. Now, that may become part of a coaching engagement, because right now we're trying to figure out, how we help people understand how they can best adapt as supervisors and as team members to this way of working. So if that's information that can help them, then maybe, having a guide through that can really help. And maybe at some point we'll explore something else that does start aggregating it up a little bit more. So it's always kind of, figuring out what else we can do with the information we have to help people be as the, kind of bring their best self to the job, while not kind of going so far that we can, undermine the very things that make it possible for us to do any of this work.
Yeah, and as you mentioned that the whole bring your best self to the job, I realized we were a bit remiss. We missed part of the table setting early on. What's the goal here, right? What are you trying to help people do? Obviously, it sounds like part of it is finding a work-life balance that enables people to be happy and therefore productive. But what is the goal of the program specifically? Is it to get performance out of people? Is it to make sure that they stick around and are happy? What are you trying to do?
Well, the goal is to get people on the moon and then onto Mars. That's the goal. And to continue to develop in aeronautics, and to continue to understand and bring our science data to the world, and
right. It all goes back to the main mission.
It all goes back to the mission. And in order to best accomplish that mission, there's a few things that we think that we can do, with this kind of information, and with the right responsible application of it. And some of it is making sure that we have the right people in the right jobs at the right time, to where you have that kind of that match that will help somebody take that next step and stretch and accomplish, and also meet that mission requirement. There's a lot of kind of economic inefficiency that can happen in that space of just getting people into the right jobs. So part of it is that best use of our talent. Another part of it is alignment as an organization of, are we all on the same page about how we should work together, and how that can go best? And, are people communicating well with each other, and have we planned effectively? And, so part of it is that kind of organizational alignment. Part of it as well is great leadership, as well as, helping individuals grow in their career. And the more that we can provide insights that can, help with supervision or executive leadership, or help an individual see where there's opportunity and to improve, there's that as well. So it's basically to, do anything that we can to provide insights that can help people make better decisions in those areas, as well as can feed directly into the way that they're engaging with, the way that they work here, which again, in a hybrid world, we're all adapting. So any help and insight we can get to do that is valuable.
Excellent. So as we get toward the end of our time here, I did want to make sure we talked about the future of work, right? That's what we're here to talk about. You talked a little bit about that already, right? Not just with the larger missions, getting back to the moon and Mars and all that stuff, but even with what you're working on, the idea that you might have individualized reports and some of these other things. What else, though, is in the future? As someone who works in this space, not just for you and what you're doing at NASA, but what do you see more broadly within the performance analytics space? What's on the horizon? What cool tech data merging and abilities do we have coming?
Yeah, great question. I mean, for one thing, I think the silos that have so traditionally existed in information will just continue to be less of an inhibitor. So being able to join more and more information in a way that can be discoverable and reliable information that you can bring to a whole picture, that's a really valuable piece of it. And there's just constant innovation in the way that data and systems are architected to do that. Another thing is, once you have all of that information more accessible, how do you model it in different ways? And there's really great work that we're doing in our R&D side around, how would you model out different kinds of skills based on a lot of unstructured information that's out there? Because like your job title really, I mean, it tells so little about what you bring to the table, or even like what the work is. So if you can get a more robust kind of signature of all of the great things that somebody brings to the table, they can then kind of bring more of themselves to the mission. And if we can understand the requirements in the mission better, we can plan better and advocate more for what we can do with the resources that we have, and make sure that we're making the best use of taxpayer dollars. So the ability to model that information and drive that into I'd love to see a future without resumes, where there's just like you have this kind of digital signature that you can manage and curate and cultivate, but that is really data driven, and that can help bring that kind of match. And certainly the experience that people have as well, working all of the above into the systems that you're interacting with, the way that you work, so that it can be providing kind of more personalized guidance of, hey, have you considered that with the strengths that you have, there might be an opportunity for you to follow this kind of path. If you're interested in that, here's a couple of training courses you might want to consider, or here's a detail opportunity that might be great for you. Here's a mentor you might want to engage with. So like having that as part of your kind of digital career consulting, and helping navigate your career, so that ultimately it's not just a great job at any one moment, but that we're helping people accomplish a lifetime of the fulfillment and success that they can really bring to the table. But again, all of that to take care of our workforce and do great things on the mission here.
So how close are we to that? Are we at just the foundational? Because I know data in particular, you're talking about unstructured data. That is such a rough hardship. How close are we to a place where we can collect the data at the raw level and really have meaningful insights to the level that you're talking about, where it follows you, it's career wide. It's not a black box. We're really understanding what's coming out of it and why. Is that 10, 15 years in the future, or is that next year?
That's a great question. I mean, I don't think it'll be 15 years in the future. We're there. I think it's just going to continue iterating and growing and developing. But there is meaningful progress toward this by way of just increasing, for one thing, skills within the workforce to be able to do more with this. And it's so exciting to see the kind of talent that's coming into this agency, and that is coming through educational programs that keep getting stronger and stronger. So the people who are going to be tackling these challenges are just so increasingly equipped and amazing people. So that's helping. The technologies themselves keep evolving, and then the more that we actually start to use that with the data that we have, and start really building that understanding, that will create network effects here too, that will keep growing. So HR is always an interesting area for me. Again, I've been doing analytics work outside of HR and in HR at different times. With HR, there's so much of it that is just written. We talk about, well, how do we know what our people are working on, or what they're getting accomplished, or what their strengths are? Well, you write a position description, you write a job description when you're hiring for the job. Somebody comes on board, you write job objectives for them, and then you write performance reviews, and all of this is these paragraphs of information that are describing what somebody does. So if you can use natural language processing to make sense out of that, and then use things like graph databases and graph algorithms to understand how that relates as sort of a more complex picture, and then start plugging that into some of these analyses and systems, I think there's going to be some pretty amazing things happening all the time. We're starting to see a market explosion in this too, innovation in industry, that's fantastic. And the more that we partner across academia and industry and government, I think we're going to do some amazing things before, probably faster than you might expect, and certainly slower than some of us would hope for. So
always the way it is with technology, right? But unfortunately, we are
Right.
out of time now. Keith, thanks so much for joining us and talking about your work.
Yeah, great talking to you, Aaron. Thanks very much.
For you out there, be sure to stay tuned to Next Up for continuing coverage on the future of work. And be sure to check out our other great videos in this series as well. For Next Up, I'm Aaron Boyd. We'll see you next time.
Hi, I'm Alexis Bonnell, and I'm the Emerging Technology Evangelist supporting public servants at Google. Many of us are struggling to dig ourselves out of the deluge of work the last year created, and many of us are feeling the effects of burnout. Tools like AI can help reduce burnout and give public servants more time for the work they love. While AI may seem exotic or expensive, the truth is AI is simpler than you think. And here are 3 ways that AI can help. It can help automate procurement, finance, or auditing tasks, and even do research, providing public servants with more time to exercise their years of experience where applying things like critical thinking, discretion, and judgment are required. Also, virtual agents ensure people get the critical information they need while freeing up staff to do more complex inquiries. Google Workspace offers features like collaborative editing, language suggestion tools, and the ability to make simple no-code apps that connect your program work with things like email, documents, and chat. But importantly, with Google Cloud, privacy and security are built in. And best of all of our tools are 100% carbon neutral right now, so you can fight burnout and global warming at the same time. A special thanks to all of the public servants out there keeping our nation safe. If Google can serve you, please check us out at cloud.google.com.